It started on a crisp autumn morning when Lena sat across from her best friend, Mark, at their favourite cafe. The warm scent of coffee mingled with the earthy aroma of fallen leaves. But Lena could barely taste her latte. She had something to confess, something that made her stomach churn with anxiety. "Mark," Lena began, her voice trembling, "I'm pregnant." Mark's eyes widened in shock. "Wait, what? But how? You haven't been with anyone, right?" Lena nodded, her face pale. "That's what I'm saying. I haven't. I don't know how this happened." Mark leaned in, his expression shifting from disbelief to concern. "Are you sure? Maybe it's a mistake. Did you take a test?" Lena reached into her bag and pulled out a small plastic strip. She placed it on the table, the two glaring pink lines proof enough. "I took 3 tests," she whispered, her voice breaking. "All positive." Mark sat back, his mind racing. "Lena, this doesn't make any sense. Did something happen that you don't remember?" Lena hesitated, her fingers tightening around the edge of her cup. She had tried to push it from her mind, tried to convince herself it was just a nightmare. But now, with this impossible truth staring her in the face, she couldn't ignore it any longer. "A few months ago," she began hesitantly, "I had this dream. At least I thought it was a dream. It felt so real, though." Mark's gaze sharpened. "What kind of dream?" Lena looked down, her voice barely audible. "I was asleep in my bed, and I woke up to this presence. A man. But he wasn't solid. He was like a shadow or smoke, but with eyes that burned like embers." Mark's face remained impassive, but he urged her to continue. "He didn't say anything, he just moved closer. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream, it was like he was controlling me. He got into my bed and then Her voice cracked. "I woke up in the morning drenched in sweat. I told myself it was just a nightmare, but now..." Lena gestured to the test on the table, her hand trembling. "What if it wasn't a dream?" Mark's expression softened, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something Lena couldn't place. "Lena, that's unsettling. But it's still more likely there's a logical explanation. You should see a doctor, get some tests done. Maybe there's, I don't know, something medical going on." Lena nodded, though her expression remained doubtful. "I'll make an appointment. But Mark, I'm scared. What if this thing is real? What if he comes back?" That night, Lena's fear kept her awake. Every shadow seemed to stretch and writhe. Every creak of the floorboards made her heart race. She clutched her blanket tightly, whispering silent prayers to an indifferent ceiling. Days passed, then weeks. The doctor confirmed what the tests had already revealed. Lena was indeed pregnant. Blood work and ultrasounds revealed no abnormalities, no medical anomaly to explain the situation. It was as though the child had appeared in her womb by sheer will. As her belly grew, so did her unease. Mark stayed by her side, trying to provide support, but even his steadfast presence couldn't keep the nightmares at bay. Night after night, Lena dreamed of the shadow man. He never spoke, never touched her, but his glowing eyes bore into hers, and she always woke up with the same cold sweat and an overwhelming sense of dread. One evening, Lena's thoughts swirled as she sat alone in her apartment. She picked up her coffee cup, left behind from earlier that morning when Mark had visited. As she took a sip, a strange bitterness coated her tongue. She frowned, setting the cup down. A sudden dizziness washed over her and the room began to spin. Mark's words echoed in her mind from that day at the cafe. "Are you sure? Maybe it's a mistake." Her vision blurred, and panic gripped her as pieces of memories she didn't know she had began to surface. Mark's face hovering over her while she lay in bed, unable to move. His whispered words, "This is for us." Lena's breathing quickened as realization dawned. She staggered to her phone, but her limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. The room grew darker, and before she blacked out, she saw him, Mark, standing in the doorway, a shadowy silhouette against the dim light. "It's almost time," he said, his voice calm and cold. "You'll see. This is what was meant to be." Lena's world went black, her final thought a scream trapped in her mind. When she woke, she was no longer in her apartment. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and her swollen belly felt heavier than before. She tried to move, but her body was restrained. Mark's voice came from somewhere in the shadows. "Don't be afraid, Lena. He's almost here." And then she saw them, glowing eyes, burning like embers, watching her from the darkness. The shadow man was back, and this time he wasn't alone.